Troy Aikman went from being called too serious to setting Monday Night Football viewership records. So what changed? He's one of the most honest dudes in sports broadcasting, and the evolution of his career aligns with culture's acceptance of realness. More to come on that. Early on, he played it safe, reserved, professional, almost robotic. But it feels like people have shifted away from no nonsense, just football to high-level football with the appropriate level of criticism. As culture evolved, so did he. Fans started wanting real, unfiltered insight, and Aikman leaned into that. As a result, Monday Night Football, that had been struggling since John Gruden left, started seeing record-breaking ratings since Aikman and Buck took over. That is not a coincidence, and let's find out why. So this topic really hits home for me, and it's why I'm making this video, because I'm a guy, especially early on when I started, when I got a mic, I had a tendency to be very formal and, polished, and it feels like society has shifted to, you want the feeling like you're just having a beer with your buddies, and Aikman went from being that stiff, more polished look to now feels like he's one of the most honest and real and unfiltered broadcasters. He took over Monday Night Football in 2022. And let's go down a quick timeline of the color analyst that Monday Night Football has had. We all know about Gruden from 09 to 17. That was a great run. The iffy, shaky Jason Witten, Booger McFarland. Honestly, shout out Booger because he got a lot of flack during that era, and the fact that he is consistently on our television screens every single Saturday still, that's not easy to do. Reinvent yourself. Then I went to Brian Greasy, then Louis Riddick. The one that sticks out that I forgot, 2006 to 2008, when I was in middle school, I totally forgot. Tony Kornheiser was a color analyst. How did I forget about that? In the post-Gruden era from 2018 to 2021, they averaged 12.85 million viewers per Monday Night Football game. In the Aikman era, it's up to 15.8 million viewers a game. In an era where media competition has never been higher with streaming and social media, that's pretty good. The early years for Aikman's broadcasting career started in 1998, which, if you're doing the math, was before he retired from the NFL. He called NFL Europe games for Fox. And then in 2001, when he did retire, he immediately went into the booth and worked a three-man booth alongside Dick Stockton and Daryl Johnson. In 2002, he was promoted to Fox's lead analyst when, funny enough, John Madden left for ABC's coverage of Monday Night Football. Sound familiar? He was still part of a three-man team with, yes, Joe Buck, but also Chris Collinsworth, which I didn't know. Kind of cool that two of the biggest color commentators now in football were once part of a three-man crew. In 2005, Collinsworth would leave, which made Buck and Aikman the lead duo for Fox for the next 17 years. And then in 2006, Buck and Aikman got their first crack at calling a Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Seahawks. During those early days of Aikman's broadcasting career, a common sentiment was, hey, his deep understanding of the game of football is evident, but he's lacking some personality, might be too reserved compared to the other flashy analysts at the time. And when I was preparing for this video, a quote that stuck out to me was from Aikman himself, reflecting on this time period, saying, I enjoyed broadcasting, but it doesn't replace the feeling of being on the field. Which I hadn't thought about that way because, to be honest, as a guy who calls college football games, I am well aware that there are guys with bigger names and bigger playing careers than me that oftentimes get that analyst seat. And so my mindset going into those games is how lucky am I to be here? How cool is this? This is awesome because I didn't play at the highest level. I hadn't thought about it from Aikman's perspective, where every single time he sits down in the booth to call a game, especially early on, it's a reminder to himself of, hey, I once was able to do it at the highest level and now I no longer can. And there was probably some depressed feelings there. Hadn't thought about it that way. The 2010s were the prime Fox years. I'm calling this the respected but polarizing chapter. In 2015, reports say that he almost walked away from broadcasting entirely after the famous Giants-Patriots Super Bowl because of those depressed feelings that we were talking about. Depressed because he wasn't on the field and he didn't take any satisfaction in covering the game as a broadcaster. I didn't find anything on what switched in his head there, but 2018, that's where Thursday Night Football on Fox started, and he took the reins there. And then in 2020, this is where you get some of the unfiltered or the personality clips and maybe the evolution of Aikman when he was caught on a hot mic during a 2020 military flyover when it was the pandemic and only 15,000 fans were in Raymond James Stadium. And the hot mic, he said, it's a lot of jet fuel just to use for a flyover for 15,000 people. Don't think that would happen on the Biden-Harris ticket. This is not me trying to get political. It's me saying maybe that was the breaking of the seal for Aikman to feel comfortable being more off the cuff with his criticism, which I respect. By this time, the perception for Aikman had shifted to more of a credibility that he was one of the most prepared and knowledgeable analysts in the game, period. This was not just a Hall of Fame quarterback that was showing up and just reacting to the decades of football knowledge that he had in his brain. No, he was preparing for the nuances of each individual player, and regardless of where you were at on the pairing of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, you appreciated and respected that. And in the same lane, that duo of Buck and Aikman had been rolling for quite some time now. And again, they were criticized at times, but they were universally respected. That being said, the criticism of Aikman continuing to be monotone with his analysis was still prevalent. Two things that stuck out to me about this period: Aikman was quoted saying it took him 15 plus years for me, being Aikman, as a broadcaster to really have a feel for the broadcast itself and be able to walk out and know whether or not we did a good job as a team. My first reaction was 15 years? That's a long time, especially when he's calling a full slate of games, 16, 17, probably preseason 2, 18 games a year. That's a lot of games to get to a point where after 15 years, you're finally able to realize if it was a good broadcast or not. But it was a good gut check for me because last year was my first full year doing it. It's really my fourth year calling games in general. So this thing takes time. And then two, and more juicy, was during this time frame in, I don't have the exact year, but I believe it was whenever Skip Bayless was hired at Fox, Aikman was publicly critical of Fox hiring Skip Bayless, which shows that he is at a point of prestige, not only as a player, but as a member of Fox, to be critical, because for most commentators, for most sports voices, if you're critical of your employer, you're out. And again, we're warming up from early 2000s. It was, hey, Aikman's not saying anything that's going to piss off anyone. And then now, 18 years later, he's criticizing his employer. The evolution of being critical and being respected as a result of that is front of mind. The third phase of Aikman's evolution as a broadcaster is the ESPN move phase. I'm calling this the refreshed and more appreciated phase. In March 2022, it was announced that he would be leaving Fox after a 22-year tenure, heading to ESPN's Monday Night Football coverage, which, as we talked about, that's a time when, relatively speaking, Monday Night Football was struggling, trying to find who that lead analyst voice would be, and they plucked Aikman. One of the coolest parts about this dynamic, though, is that everything you read, Aikman's negotiations were very much a package deal, meaning that Joe Buck had to come with him. And there's some nuances there from a contract negotiation standpoint for both of them. But his departure was reportedly influenced by limited communication with Fox executives during contract discussions. That ultimately shook up the entire landscape of broadcasting in 2022-2023 because it led to Kevin Burkhardt getting the lead play-by-play voice with Fox, and then Greg Olsen slid in there. And then, as we know, the very next year, maybe it was 2 years later, Kevin Burkhardt stayed put, and insert Tom Brady as the biggest broadcasting contract, or at least analyst contract, in the history of sports television. At least from a color commentary perspective, you got Tom Brady making $37.5 million a year, Aikman 18, Romo 17, Collinsworth 12.5, Kirk Herbstreit 10. When I see that, Herbstreit's a bargain. In 2023, Buck and Aikman had a historic broadcasting milestone when they surpassed Pat Summerall and John Madden for the most consecutive years covering the NFL together, with 22 straight years. That's getting it done. And in this third phase, the ESPN move phase, the perception of Aikman shifted to a more candid and engaging and universally accepted voice. And many people attribute that to the lack of network pressure or a fresh environment. But to me, it's not only just that and experience, but I also think it's a societal shift that we've seen in sports media as a result of the rise of the Pat McAfees of the world, and because social media is no longer this new thing we're getting used to, but now it is an established pillar in our society of how we consume news. With that rise, we've seen the voices that win in this evolution, call it 2019, 2020, 2021, the voices that are raw, that are authentic, that are talking to you as if you're sitting around the couch having a beer with them. Those are the voices that have climbed in sports media. It's not the guys that are saying very middle of the road comments, buttoned up, suit and tie, I'm not going to piss anyone off. The type of guys that, hey, when you're saying a statement, you know that's not what they're saying behind closed doors when they're having dinner with their buddies. That shift in societal's acceptance of what I called realness, I think Troy Aikman, and it's why I made this video, his career really resembles that path, where more reserved early on, then as we get used to social media and different types of voices start rising, it almost gave permission for guys like Troy Aikman to be more candid without the worry that I'm going to get fired or get network pressure. No, because my network execs know that the people sitting on their couch want that feedback, and Troy Aikman deserves a ton of credit for reinventing himself. At the end of the day, he's not being a dick. He's just being real, he's being fair, he's being honest, and that is universally respected by players, coaches, fans, and media professionals. I find Troy Aikman's evolution as a broadcaster fascinating. One, because I call games for a living, so, you know, just the general theme is of interest. But I also remember being a kid and the criticisms of him being monotone, and then now I'm watching TikToks where people are saying, hey, Troy Aikman, he's a real one. He's telling us the truth. And so it's cool to see. I'm always trying to make content that I'm interested in, because hopefully you guys are interested in it as well. And if you like this video, hit that like button down below. Subscribe as well, because I'm coming out with football content every single day on this platform. And yeah, thanks guys. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.